We are recording now. I am Kimberly Warren, and welcome to Mid-City Excellence Solutions Summit. And we are here to help enhance the quality of life for our community, for our city, our state, and our nation. And right now, just signing in, we have Bishop Howell all the way from Minneapolis. Hello, Bishop Howell. Thank you for joining the show. How are you?
Kimberly, we're fighting a good fight right now. Thanks so much for having us on your show this evening. Thank you.
You are welcome. Thank you for being here. So I know you're doing double duty and you have to make appearances elsewhere, but we want to know, since you are in the epicenter of what is going on since the George Floyd death, and we want to know how things go. It's now have upgraded and officers apprehended. Are things calming down for you? What's happening in the fight, Bishop Howell?
Yes, the demonstrations are continuing peaceably. The looting, the rioting, and all of the bad stuff that went along with that has ceased. We're pretty happy about that as we continue to make our protest against police brutality. The entire city is now working as one unit. We had the memorial service today for Brother Floyd. Sharpton was here, and there was such a wonderful gathering of individuals by invitation only to come and pay their respects to he before his body was shipped off to North Carolina today. But we're very, very pleased to say that many discussions are about to take place in our community, changing the books, changing civil rights, changing human rights, and we are going to make more demands on the police brutality portion, that this country will no longer have to bear the burden of this hatred that we've been carrying for so many years. So we are bearing hatred. We're bearing a lot of hatred. But as Dr. King said, that the voice of the unheard is rioting. And so we certainly believe that this is the right time for leaders to step forward, make their marks known now. This is such a watershed moment for all of us. And this is the right time to speak against police brutality once and for all.
Looking back on the last week, you've been pastoring, what's the name of your church?
Shiloh Temple.
Yes. So you've been pastoring for a long time. How long have you been in the ministry?
I've been pastoring for over 40 years.
Wow. So looking back on the highs and the lows, has there ever been a situation quite like this where the nation or the city just stopped and said, we have a problem here? And is there anything that you as a pastor or as your team of clergy and bishop, anything we could have done to prevent this, or was it just going to come to a head?
This country is white supremacy, without question. Every system in this country is all about white supremacy, in education, in health, in politics. And I think Reverend Sharpton said it best. Yes, we had the police who had his knee on Mr. Floyd, but their knees have been on our necks for a long time. And we have been tired every time we have tried to do something. We've been kneed out. And it's time now to lift that knee up. And I do believe that the time has come that we are able now to tell white America, take your knee off our neck. And we're not saying that everybody's a racist, but we're saying the system is racism. It is white supremacy that has definitely taken over. And we've got to change the books, to change the understanding, the culture, so that every person has a right to live. Every person has a right to breathe, right? Every person has a right to do what God made them to do in this time that we live in.
Bishop Howell, we have the chief of police on here that has rarely missed a community event and an opportunity to give his blessing on peaceful protests, and his team even walked on Sunday, and they were down there providing protection today. What would you like to say to all chiefs of police that aren't leaning in, and what more can we do? We do need law and order. we're not ready to throw out the baby with the bathwater, are we?
No, absolutely not. This is our country. We're born in this country. We love our country. What is this? The home of the free and land of the brave? Is that how it goes?
Mm-hmm.
And this is where we need to make that come true. It's the government of the people, for the people, and by the people. That's what America is about. It's a democracy for every person, every person.
Mm-hmm.
I honor police chiefs who honor that understanding. I honor that. And so police chiefs who are seeing the police brutality within their system and doing something about it, then I admire them very much so. It's hard to be black when you're not a criminal. But when you're black, when your skin is black and you're already pinpointed as a criminal, this is the we have some to our chiefs that are honoring that. I respect them highly, and I hope they will continue to purge out their police force system to make certain that when we teach and train our police, that they understand what they are doing. They're protecting the community and not singling out any particular gender or population.
God bless you. I'm glad you're still standing. Your church is still standing. We've been praying for you. And I know you said some of the people that were looting and rioting, they were not from the community, and they were anarchists who just hate government, hate schools, law enforcement. And so do you still feel the same way? This is not your community, brothers from the hood that are doing this?
Right. We believe that these were outsiders that came in and did the damage, because what person within the community is going to tear down their community? Mm-hmm. We have one grocery store, we have one drugstore, and they were looted, raped. I mean, it was ransacked. Why? Because someone did not have the care of the community. They didn't care about the death of Mr. Floyd. They were looking, they had a want of destruction. Unfortunately, that came and showed its ugliness amidst peaceful demonstrations.
I know.
But we're going to bound. We're going to build. We are going to rebuild. We will rebound. It will come back.
Thank you so much. I know you have to go to another appointment. What happens if we get a guilty verdict? What kind of conversations are you having with your parishioners? And you have quite a rapport with the community, youth, and people around this nation. Now, what kind of conversations do we need to be happening or having in order to resolve conflict in a peaceful manner if we do not get the verdict that we want?
It's going to be terrible if we don't get the verdict that we want. We're going to ask everyone to be patient because there's a process involved. We know prosecution has a position. We know the defense has a position. We've already heard some nasty stuff pertaining to that, but we're going to be strong, bold, and courageous to know that justice will prevail during this time. It will happen, but we're asking everyone to be patient.
Thank you. Do you still need to get off, or you got a few more minutes, or you need to go to your next appointment?
I go now.
Okay, thank you so much. We appreciate your time, and we're praying for you, Bishop Howell.
God bless you all. Thank you for your program. Thanks for the
You're
work.
Welcome.
Thank you, Bishop.
You're welcome. Oh, wow. I think we needed to hear that. And so one of the questions was, and we have quite a esteemed group tonight. And I want you to introduce yourselves and kind of what a little bit a background of what you're doing. And everyone was asked on here because of your diverse perspectives, even though you may be people of color, even though you may be in law enforcement. We're going to see tonight that we all may have similar perspectives, but also different too. So we're going to start with Chief Connally tonight. We just left Civic Park, the south side of the City Hall, and we had a unity prayer with clergy, with priests and with people of various faiths. And we had some good soul stirring songs, but I think that was the first time all the people of faith came together in a public setting. We have been praying behind the scenes. Chief Connally, were you pleased with what happened tonight and what's happening along the line of peaceful protests in your city?
I'm absolutely pleased with the peaceful protest. The folks that I've talked to have been very, very friendly, sharing good information, and they really are. They're out to bring the community together, and I think that's important. And as I've said before, and as I told them on Sunday, when I approached them, I asked them if they wanted some water. They said they needed some ice, and we spoke. I answered questions, listened to them, and a lot of it was about listening. And I tell you what, I had about 5 officers out there with me, and it was really moving for them. And it was actually the officers that organized the event on Tuesday, because they were really moved when they found out the perception, and that realized that when people looked at them, they were looking at them in some cases like they look at these criminals that were up in Minnesota. And I refer to them as criminals. I know they're cops, but I don't like to even call them cops. It's an insult to the badge. Not just the one with his knee on the neck, but we take an oath of office, and that oath is to protect. And every one of them violated their oath of office. We actually require all of our officers to watch that entire video. And every time I make myself watch it, I get queasy. I get sick to my stomach.
Chief Connally, thank you for being here, and thank you for your ongoing input. You know, you have not missed the Martin Luther King Forum. You have not missed a night of, you know, responding to the needs of the community. As we are still in this, there are going to be other situations that arise, like maybe yesterday, about 24 hours ago, we had a young African-American man tased, and there was 2,000 hits, 2,000 views. And I was up till 3 in the morning, and someone's like, it's happening again, it hasn't stopped. They're toying with us, they're playing with us, they still don't respect us. Are we going to have to do something more drastic? And I was like, you know what do we do in the meantime? There are going to be other incidents, because we've been, you know, dealing with, like Bishop Howell said before he had to leave, systemic racism, not just with law enforcement. It's in the church, it's in the schools, it's in the healthcare system, it's everywhere. So what do we do if we have a problem and we think law enforcement are still spreading racist, profiling, discriminatory practices and inhumane practices? What is the process, Chief? Because we don't know in a way.
If you don't mind, if I could briefly address that incident yesterday first, and then I'll go on into that process. And you know, you shared that video with me. It was the first thing I saw this morning when I woke up. And
good morning, Chief.
Yes. So in that incident, the police were called to a domestic assault. That a male subject kicked in the door, assaulted his pregnant girlfriend, and punched her and threw her on the ground. When the officers arrived, there was evidence of an assault. She gave a name and description of the person. They went and they found that subject. And when they did, they tried to get his side of the story. He didn't cooperate. They told him that he was under arrest. Told him why he was under arrest, and asked him if he would put his hands behind his back. And at that time, he refused to put his hands behind his back. He stiffened up, and they tried to get him in custody. So they took him to the ground, and they still couldn't get his arms behind his back. And that's what actually led to the tasing. They tased him one time. And the picture you saw, his arms out to the side, that was after the tasing. He put his arms out, but he was asked several times and told several times, if you don't do it, he'll tase it. After that, they immediately got some medical attention. There were some complaints about his current mental status, so he was taken to Mosaic to be mentally evaluated. So that's the circumstances surrounding that. Now, if someone has a complaint or a concern, you can file a complaint several ways. You can call down and ask to talk to a supervisor. You can give it to us in writing. You can email it in. Sergeant Gary Murphy is our professional standards sergeant. He's the one that initially takes a complaint. In most cases, he's the one that investigates it. And the other thing I would highlight too is if somebody wants to make a complaint and they say they want to remain, now I'm seeing myself in a bigger picture.
And we highlighted
I like seeing the rest of y'all at the same time. Much better
okay.
On the video. So if they want to remain confidential, they have any concerns about that, I can order that be treated confidential or just like a confidential informant. And any officers involved are not allowed. That's the information on that person is sealed from anybody other than myself and our professional standards sergeant.
Okay. And so people have to speak up instead of saying, you know, we've got to take more drastic measures and abandon the peaceful protest. There is a process. We had an answer within just a few hours. Latonya Williams was also working on it. And because she is a community director at the Bartlett Center. Latonya, once you started making contact with the St. Joe PD at the same time, was it easier for you to convey the message to the people that were upset? And do you think you were able to dissipate anger just because you had more knowledge? Latonya, I think you're on mute.
Okay, can everybody hear me now?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
So she's our BC community director. So how did it help you convey what was going on to the people that were upset? 2,000 views, you know, of seeing this man tased as he lied on the ground.
I mean, I'm not gonna lie. After it was inboxed over to me, I got angry. I was really upset by it because tensions are already extremely high. And of course, having a look at anybody like that, I mean, it makes you upset. And so, but after looking at the details and everything like that, I mean, I don't actually know if I was really able to help. Just mainly because, in order to be honest, people are still untrusting of the police force. I mean, it's still early. And I think coming together at the picnic and everything, it was amazing and it was much needed. Okay, but that was one thing. And this is years and years and years of anger and aggression built up. And so, of course, like always, I'll continue to do everything that I can in order to help, but it's an ongoing thing.
Well, you don't erase 400 years of slavery, dissatisfaction, racial tension. And so, but I think the dialogue has started. And I think, you know, all the protesters have been committed to peace, and the signs are strong. They help them vent and express their dissatisfaction. But Chief, have you've been in many different cities, a lot larger than St. Joseph. Are you pleased with the process and the way the communications are going with the people that are protesting?
Oh yeah, absolutely. With the communication with those that are protesting. What I'm not pleased with is that we're in the situation to begin with. You know, and someone told me something about us that a good job would be if our community was the point in our relationships was the point where people didn't feel it necessary to protest. And, you know, trust is really the foundation of, you know, any kind of faith in the legal system has to be based on trust. And when you lose trust, you lose legitimacy of the entire system. So, you know, it's something we've worked hard for a number of years, as you know, but there's an area that we've missed. So we've got a lot more work to do. And I think the only way you build trust is by repetition, time and repetition of consistent and proper behavior. And I'd certainly understand, you know, that people, it's a tough time. And I understand why. I understand why people aren't just going to say, oh, well, that's okay. You know, any use of force takes away from trust. But there are times when you have something like this where somebody has assaulted somebody, where we do have to do our job, and we do have to bring that person to the system, unfortunately.
We have Facebook with us now. We have almost 4,000 viewers. Last week it was 2,500, but we'll see if we get back up to that. I hope you can hear us okay. If you have any questions, you can email Leameana Davis or inbox us. She's with LD Data Solutions, and she is helping us with all of our tech needs, and is our computer center director in her night job. So Leameana's from New York, so we'll come back and tap her brain on that. But I want to introduce you all in our Solution Summit tonight to Ishaq Haskell. And speaking of peaceful demonstrations, he has been protesting in the big ATL. And I heard, you know, you were at a protest, and it was peaceful. There were thousands of people there, and just one person turned that protests around and made it something negative. How can you keep the synergy going in a positive way? And Ishaq, tell us a little bit about your background and what's going on in ATL, because you may be doing the same things we're doing, but on a grander scale.
Well, I wouldn't necessarily say a grander scale, but my name is Ishaq Haskell. I'm resident of Atlanta, Georgia. Been very involved. I'm a member at Ebenezer Baptist Church. It's actually one of the churches of Martin Luther King Jr. and his father as well. Been involved with My Brother's Keeper, which is a food ministry helping feed the homeless here in the metropolitan Atlanta area. Pretty much anybody that's able or needing, we reach out to those folks on a regular basis. Yeah, to go straight to your point as far as the peaceful protests and the how I've heard it several times. Andrew Young said a few bad seeds can kind of change the narrative of what's going on. It went from peaceful protest and hopefully something that Atlanta would be able to be a shining example of how to go about it, to just another situation where we're looting and rioting. A few moments ago, we spoke about trust and how the relationship of trust is broken and how that's so necessary for our communities. And I think, Chief Connally, that things like this forum that we're at right now and having your availability is such a huge part in helping this particular situation. I've seen, not been involved with many protests over the years, but I've seen them. I remember the Rodney King, and it's gone on and trickled on Trayvon Martin. There's been several that have happened over the years, but I do believe that at this point, we're at a juncture that is different than any that I've seen before. I wasn't really sure where this would go, but I've seen Amish people in Pennsylvania. I see people in Switzerland. I saw a protest in Denver, Colorado, where I counted maybe 7 or 8 Black people, and the rest of the people were all white individuals. And it made me so happy on the inside. I got a big swell of pride just realizing that perhaps this is something that's different, or something that will be different. I'm curious to get your perspective on what the next step is, because it seems like the protests are going forward. We've got everybody charged at this point, but I don't think that that's where the stop is. I don't think that's where we're going to stop. And I'm curious to see what suggestions there are for people, because you mentioned the fact that this is going to be a process. We're not going to get to conviction tomorrow. So how do we collectively incite things or keep things being as peaceful as possible, but still getting the message across? Because so many times in our communities, something happens and then there's a small action and then we feel gratified or satisfied, but then it goes right back to this again. And so my question is, how do we move forward with the balance being on both ends, with the balance being towards the weight and finding out of the conviction, and also still putting the pressure in places that pressure needs to be?
Yeah, who wants to answer that? You know, how do we move forward? I don't know if we can control all the people that want to riot and loot, but the one instance that David and I was talking about, you were, I don't know, around CNN, and everything was peaceful. Everybody was praying. We were having kumbaya, come to Jesus, meet and heal the community. And then all of a sudden, it seems like one individual came out of nowhere. Can you tell us a little bit about that? And are these Black young men that are mad and angry? Because I think that's, some people on the outside think this is just the Black movement. Who are these people that are stealing, looting, and carrying stuff out of Starbucks? Who are these people that are bashing the cars and breaking windshields?
So the individuals here in Atlanta that, from what I saw, that started it, were all colors. To be honest, there's a Black gentleman, that's one specifically, he took his shirt off and with dreads and started burning the American flag and spitting at police officers. And before you know it, he's on top of cars and breaking windows out. There were also white gentlemen that, you know, were smashing police cars in with their skateboards and windows. It was, I look at it as opportunists, because I understand the anger. I understand the frustration. I mean, I think that anybody that has any semblance of a heart can watch the video of last week or 10 days ago and feel extraordinary compassion. But I just don't see how, you know, inciting things to turn to a point of riot is where we get better. But I do understand the pain. I understand the narrative of something's got to happen and something's got to change. But like I said, I witnessed it being a shining example of what should be done and turning into an example of why police perhaps feel the need to continue down the path of power abuse. Because I just don't see where it benefits. You know, I understand the frustration. I just don't see where it benefits. Yes, and be very specific. It was like 1 or 2 people that really caused the tipping point here in Atlanta. It could have been one thing, and it ended up being something that it should not have been. And it really, very literally, was just because of 2, maybe 3 individuals that that just kind of riled the anger of everyone else. And so I see that, and those gentlemen didn't end up getting arrested or anything. And, you know, the police were very calm on this front because they were not mobilized properly. And I think they did that in an effort to show the people that we're not trying to treat you like animals. They didn't show up with riot gear. They didn't show up with SWAT teams. They showed up just to be there. And instead, you know, I guess we got taken advantage of because of that.
I want to ask Kardell Sims, who is on here right now, and Kardell Sims is the owner of Visionary Hustler LLC, and he has also just started his 501c3. He's from Sedalia, Missouri, but we get to steal him for a little bit here in St. Joseph. He is a sought-after speaker, and I met him at the Craig School of Business at an institute, and you know, he speaks all around the community and the state. And tell us a little bit about your background. And I think you understand the pain and the anger, but somehow after being out there in the streets, you made it back and had a transformation. So can you tell us a little bit about why it's so easy to go into that negative mindset as we resolve conflict instead of peaceful protest? Kardell says. Tell us the name of your nonprofit too.
My nonprofit is called North. North is an acronym for Northside Organization Reinventing the Honor. I grew up on the north side of Sedalia. Sedalia was a very segregated community. Set of railroad tracks is what separated the blacks and the whites. White people couldn't come on the black side, and when we went to the white side to go shopping, we had to fight, be called the N-word and everything else. Come from the streets, did prison time on 2 occasions, stayed in federal. I got tired of doing prison. You know, I just got tired of it. Started educating myself, told myself things was going to change. And when I got out, I started my business and been going around speaking and helped rebuilding the community back at home that I destroyed when I was out there in the streets. So I can understand the frustration and the anger, because growing up as a black male, an African-American male, you automatically is stuck into a systemic racism. It just comes with it. I mean, there's no way around it. There's nowhere it's not going to hide. It's going to come at you. And it seems like with this killing, like when police kill African American males, it's just like that's the final straw. That's the final punch to the racism. Like, you know, we've been called the N-word. We can't get the jobs. You know, we can't do this. Or we getting locked up. You know, saying they free casing us, and then at the end, you get killed by the police. You know, that's how the race. That's the top and the ending of the whole the chain. And you know, you'd be lucky if you beat them odds. I mean, with the rioting, I think everything plays its role. Me personally, I don't think the charges would have went up if the rioting wasn't the way it was. The peaceful protesting, yeah, okay, we're gonna charge the officer. But now when you see the rioting, the burning the police car, the tearing up the stores, you know, the violent nature, it brings more awareness and attention. If it was just normal protests and the marching, I don't think it would have been so much attention as with the violent nature of the looting, and that's what brings the attention. So now you got the attention draw. Now those that can dialogue, it's time for us to sit down at the table with everybody and start dialoguing and start coming up with a plan, legislations on how are we going to be able to hold police officer accountable when they commit this act. Because if I went out there and killed somebody, point blank period, I'm in handcuffs, we're going to know you're guilty until proven innocent. I feel, me personally, that should happen with the officers. Like, okay, while we investigating what's going on, we're going to lock you up. Now, we find out that you was in the right, okay. But if you was in, we found out you was in the wrong, we putting charges on you. That's just me personally how I feel, because that's how it would have went if I would have did that.
So you say systemic racism caused you to go to prison, and how can, when you made that choice to slash that hash, deal that cocaine, and join that gang, people were like, you had a choice just like my son had a choice.
Right.
We didn't set you up, you chose that life.
Right. That, now I don't want to say it caused me to go to prison, because I made a choice to get out there and be in the streets. But when you raise in the community, let's say, when you raise in the community and not property taxes pay the schooling in a sense. So if a lot of people in the property taxes in the side of the community that you raised in doesn't really do nothing, doesn't make nothing, and they're paying for your school, and you go into school and the teachers are not paid, and if you too hyper, they put you with ADHD, then you go to behavior disorder classes, and you don't want to sit in there, and you drop out of school. Once you drop out of school, you ain't got no degree, you're not getting a job, or the jobs you do get, you're not really making no money to live. So and you seeing what's going on in the community with drug dealing and stuff like that. And I can go deep into drugs being in the community, but at the end of the day, you still have a choice. But sometimes the choice is try to do right and don't get a job and starve, or go for what you know. With me, like, I graduated high school, I played college ball, but I chose to do what I did because I wanted fast money and instant gratification. And that's just what it was. I mean, but some people I know and grew up with, they didn't have them options. Mother was on drugs, father wasn't around, dropped out of high school at an early age, no education. And they just not groomed to even sit down and have a dialogue that we having now. So the way that they express their frustration and anger is through rioting, looting, because they don't know how to verbally communicate their frustration and their anger.
When I interviewed you yesterday, you talked about how you got stopped for jaywalking, and they stopped your mama for jaywalking, and to tell you, come on, I don't know if people really understand.
Yeah, I mean, it gets
that really goes on.
Yeah, that goes on. I mean, when you're a target, that stuff like that happens. I mean, and it just happens. So not only will you get the ticket, like I was telling you yesterday, I got the ticket for crossing the street, from going from my mother's house to the neighbor's house across the street, because they was thinking I was selling drugs. At the time, I wasn't selling drugs.
You wasn't dead.
I wasn't, right. I just had got out of prison for the first time and was trying to do the right transition at this time. So I was selling CDs. I used to make music, so I was selling CDs.
Somebody got shot for CDs when the Fidel.
So, I mean, that's the stuff that we face on a daily basis. Like, any small thing with being an African American male, when the police involved, is a very big chance, even though it's a small thing, that it could turn into something major. Just like that. That's just what we face.
Thank you for sharing. We have not heard from Chris Weston yet. And Chris Weston, please tell us a little bit about your background. I don't even know what city or state are you in. I can't even keep up with you, but I know you're homegrown from St. Joseph. So tell us what your perspective is. You're a deep historic thinker about the systems and what we're trying to change. Introduce yourself to the group. I know you and David have a lot of prolific thought on what the cure is and how we got where we're at.
Let's see, where to begin? Yes, I am St. Joseph grown. I am a Weston. I'm a proud member of the St. Joseph community, be it horseman. I I guess we call it Bartlett Center now. My classmate is Latonya Williams. Me and Latonya have been to school together since we were in the 3rd grade. David got her beat by a year. I met David when we were in the 2nd grade. I am in Dayton, Ohio. I work for Wright Pat Air Force Base. I left St. Joseph because I joined the Air Force right out of high school.
Wow.
Did about 9 years in the Air Force. Came back to the Air Force after getting a couple degrees. And now I'm up here doing some good stuff for a lot of money, and I don't work that hard. So that's a good blessing. I have broken a lot of rules and laws in my life. And by a lot of praying for my grandparents and elders, I slid through a lot of cracks.
What did you say? You said through crack?
Cracks.
Oh,
cracks.
okay. Because you're in the Air Force. You're in the Air Force.
No, I'm a civilian in the Air Force, everything. Chief Connally can't get me now. I'm going to pass that so I can tell the story. But Brother Simmons' story, as I'm listening to him talk, I remember growing up in Joe. It was bad then. It's not as bad now either. It's not as bad now as compared to Dayton, Ohio, or Oklahoma City. These are 2 places. I'm sorry, I guess I'm talking in circles. Sorry, guys. I literally have some stuff written down. I'm talking in circles. Left St. Joe, joined the service, got stationed at Tinker Air Force Base. I was at Tinker Air Force Base for 12 years. Came to Wright Pat Air Force Base. Now I'm in Dayton, Ohio. I live in a small town called Beaver Creek, Ohio, which means the Walmart is in walking distance from my house where John Crawford got murdered for walking with a BB gun on the cell phone. National news. They just had a sit-in Monday at the Beaver Creek at Walmart, and it started out pretty good. Someone from what I was seeing, there was a disturbance to the side. Tear gas was shot off. Now protesters are here. Disturbance is over here. Everybody's getting tear gassed. After it gets cleared up, though, the cops do take a knee with the protesters. Crazy, right?
Wow.
So, getting back to where I was going with the whole story. How did I get here? How did I get to Dayton, Ohio, making a lot of money doing nothing? Pure luck and prayer. Chief, like I say, some of the things I say, you can't hold it against me when I shake your hand. I was one of what St. Joseph called, I was a 17th Street, still am to be completely honest, 17th Street dead angel gangster. I was one of the first one of those guys. So I did the things that young boys thought we were supposed to do to get out of the hood. I did for a few years. And me and my father, I shout out to Thomas Eugene Mitchell. That's my dad for any St. Joseph people. He basically said, you're the oldest, and what you do, your siblings are going to do. There's 6 siblings behind me. And made a decision right then and there that, you know what, I'm just going to leave. I'm going to the service because outside of all my knuckleheadism, I was kind of smart. So had some highest SAT and ACT scores. And one time I was ready to skip chemistry class. They were giving the ABSBAB course, and I happened to slide in to take the ABSBAB and ended up with a 95. Straight to the Air Force.
Wow.
So.
Wow.
Being in Oklahoma City when I'm a young airman, once a month I would drive home because I'm homesick. I'm St. Joe to the day. So I got to go home. I got to get back to the block. I got to see what's going on. And that's really when I seen what I would consider getting harassed for jaywalking. Certain crimes may be going down, but there's no real detectives at the time that can investigate the type of crimes that they want to investigate. So we're going to harass the good guys, and I'm going to call certain group of people the good guys. We're going to harass you in hopes that one of you may be one of the bad guys. So we've all learned that stop and frisk was a horrible thing. Well, back to what Brother Sims was saying, they started doing stuff like getting you for jaywalking, crossing a non-busy street just so they could rustle your pockets. And that's what got me set on paying attention to how I was treated as an airman. I wasn't a black man anymore. I wasn't an angel anymore. I was an airman now, and you can't treat me this way because I'm learning rights and regulations. And say again, I was kind of lucky. So running in between certain things, even when I was still doing knuckleheaded stuff, by the grace of God, I never got any serious trouble. So fast forward, I have a couple kids, and Trayvon Martin is murdered because he didn't belong. This is my opinion. He didn't belong. Someone didn't feel he belonged in the neighborhood he was in. And that literally changed, it wiped the board clean for me. Anything I thought about young criminals and how police treat them, well, I don't care about that. I don't care about that. If we talk that, I don't know what to say. I'm here to listen for that part. I'm here because babies are dying. When Trayvon Martin got killed, my son, I got 3 sons, 2 daughters. My son was 12, my son after him was 11, and my baby boy was 6. And I went to work. I was a higher ranking individual in the office I was in. And some of my co-workers could justify why it was okay for a civilian. We haven't got the police yet. A civilian had all right to kill that young man. That's it. That's it real bad with me. I had to take a leave of absence for a second. I literally told my boss, like, this is crazy. So that's when I literally pick up my pen. I start reading more and writing more and seeing what's going on and what the laws are. So that was what, 2012 that happened? And since then, we can't even count the encounters that has ramped up from that. So it makes me wonder, as a military man, I've deployed to war environments a few times, been trained on how to deploy to the most hostile situations, de-escalate situations on a global scale. It makes me wonder, how can I come home and my child could be outside, get into an incident, and he's treated worse than any war enemy we have. We do not treat the people we're at war with the way we treat our citizens in the United States of America. Not just Black, any citizens. I think there are a lot of bullies with badges right now. I think that consequences for being a bully with a badge needs to ramp up and ramp up faster. In the military, when they want to change something, they tell you what the rule is. This is the new rule. You have a little bit of grace period to figure out that rule. And as soon as you do not understand this rule, it's a no tolerance policy. Now, no tolerance policy, I'm really not that good with, because we're all humans and we all make mistakes. So it literally, you will still, even when it happens, they're going to get you. But if they see that you have some remorse, they'll give you a chance to grow. When I see police brutality, like this situation in Minnesota, come to find out that officer has had 4 or 5 different incidences where he's very reckless with human life. So I'm here to say maybe we need to raise the standards of what makes an officer. Now, I'm also the same man to say if I raise the standards of being an officer, you gotta put your money where your mouth is. So if you wanna make a person very qualified to do a better job, we might have to take better care of them. And I'm here for all that. I'm here for all that. I'm here to pay for it. If I wanna go to a better doctor, I pay a higher price. So if I need a better teacher, and we'll get to that later, because it's a whole deeper system. I don't know what we're gonna talk about or where we wanna put the true emphasis on, because education is all I do. But police brutality is what is the topic. We have to hold these cops more accountable for their bullying actions. We have to make sure we are evaluating. Police chief just gave me great information. I literally wrote it down. When complaints happen, how can the community follow up on said complaint? How can we review and see what happened to that officer, because he is a public servant? So there's a lot of things that I think that if we literally say this is the new rule. When engaging a suspect, you treat that suspect like a citizen. Go figure. And then, like the situation where you just said the boy got tased the other night, criminals will be criminals. Even good citizens sometimes have to be tased. That's okay. I'm not against police officers being police. I'm glad that we have police. I love good police. Chief, I have a couple family members that work for you. I have police friends and family all over this United States. In the military, when you are with a soldier, airman, Marine, sailor that is doing things that's unbecoming, it's up to you to hog tie him, take him out, and report him to the commander. That's what I'm not seeing. You want to say, hey, protesters, behave. And when you start to riot, hey, calm down, calm down. And then let's say if the looters start tripping, what I seen them do here, protesters separated. Protesters are getting away because, like you said, they're being criminal. Arrest them. We're over here protesting. So, but you want a citizen to be more organized than the police department. That's the only thing that really frustrates me. You expect more out of, and I'm speaking in general, we expect more out of our community than we expect out of the people that we play to police. And hey, hi guys, I'm Chris Weston. I'm gonna go ahead and turn it back over. I'll talk.
Yeah, this is now the Chris Weston Show Solution Summit. Mr. Aaron Ford. Well, no, I thank you for those comments. I think David's waving his hands. Pastor Warren's listening in, but I think he's gonna tap out because this is our second event for today. But David, who has been dealing with the youth, David's Guri turned the big one in July, but he's got one leg in the young people and one leg into the mature, come towards the light, the mature people, not seniors yet, but mature people. So David, what are the young people saying? We got two jaywalkers on the show today. I don't know what's going on with jaywalking, but we got some reform people. We got some people that have been in the hood. And David, what are the protesters saying? Do you think we're making progress? Is there anything we need to do while we have this law? Everybody's going to be glued to their TV for these charges as we go. I don't know, are we going into court this week? Probably top of next week. And then I want to go back to Chief Connally about accountability. So David Foster, who's been our volunteer community organizer down in the trenches, but is also in the real estate development and MTV, VH1 videos and all that great stuff. And been in Atlanta. He did his time in Atlanta. So David, what's going on? Are we making progress? And what should we be doing over this next week or two as we're going through the trial, the jury, the judge, and the verdict?
So I wasn't waving my hand, but I do have something to say. I always have something to say, especially about this issue. I wanted to sum up a few things. One, I got a lot of respect for all of you guys on here. That's number one. I got a lot of respect for Chief Connally for even getting on a call like this. It takes a lot of guts to do that. And the thing that I will say is that, you know, the Chief Connally I know, especially as of right now, seems to be a guy who wants to improve, who wants to listen. who wants change, who wants dialogue, who wants to protect our amendments and protesting and peaceful protesting, things like that. I admire that, and I have a lot of respect for that. I got a lot of respect for my brother Kardell for getting on here, who has served time and has admitted he has served time. This is the face. This is not the face of a certain city. This is not the face of one city. This is not the face of Kansas City or Atlanta. This is the face of a lot of cities. I said last time that we talked, one of the things that I said was, I said, I get mad enough to riot sometimes, but you have to also remember I had a dad that talked sense into my head and calmed me down in certain situations. And
Spanked you. Okay.
Kim knows him, but a lot of people didn't have that. So at the same time, you know, with that being said, you know, I don't envy the chief's job at this moment. I do respect it. I would like to see what we can do hand in hand, because the burden is on any chief of police in any community. The burden is also on us. The burden is on me. The burden is on Kardell. It's on Chris. It's on Ishaq. And I'm specifically talking about Black men because I want to challenge me. I want to challenge you. I want to challenge us all to be better, because if we point a finger at one person, one system, I could go on and on about systemic racism. I am not going to act like it doesn't exist. It's a real thing. It exists. But what Kardell was saying is, it's not one cop. It's not one person. It's not one idea. It's not one criminal. The system is bad. The whole system is bad. And this is why I gotta say one thing that might contradict, you know, might sound a little contradictory, is the police chief that I now have become acquainted with seems like a great guy, and even some of the things that I've grown to know about you in a short amount of time, I have a lot of respect for. Now, how does a good guy challenge a bad system? That's the question that I would ask. A good guy in a bad system. And I'm not saying that St. Joe is totally bad, but I am saying every system has challenges that seem to be very consistent in every single city. Now, I don't want to take the blame off of me. I don't want to take the blame off of Kardell or Chris or Ishaq. As Black men, we still have to step up. There's things that we still have to do. I always want to get better. Maybe one of you guys are perfect, but I always see things that I can improve on. There's things that I should be volunteering, I should be mentoring. There's a lot of things that I can do. But it's in terms of this system, which we're specifically talking about today, and I've grown to have a lot of respect for our police chief. How do we make a system better? That's going to be a little bit tougher because the research that I have done tells me that it goes back years and years and years before any of us were born. So how do we challenge that? I've talked to people even just within the last 24 hours in our own city that say, oh, I think we got a lot of good police officers, but they always point out those 2 or 3 that clearly don't want this type of change. It's very clear, it's very evident. And sometimes you got to be a light in the darkness, you know. Sometimes you have to shine in the midst of everything that's going on. I don't know what my part would be on the other end of it, but I can do what I can do on my end of it to try to make things better in whatever capacity that I can do. But, you know, and that's why I always go back to these 3 points, because these 3 points make me feel like we might be able to accomplish something if we could achieve some of these things. One is, how do we track excessive force? Two is body cameras. You know, I could see how that could go both ways, because then everybody who thinks that, well, you know, but that's kind of their right. But everybody who thinks that they were done wrong, you know, they kind of should be able to say something about it. But if there were no injustices, the body camera would not show anything that was wrong. And then also de-escalation tactics. I also respect you for saying, you know, responding to the situation that we saw last night, which Marissa sent that to me. She's supposed to be on this video call tonight, but she wasn't able to make it because she's actually protesting as we speak, which I do commend peaceful protesting. But
yeah, that's
the dilemma
United We Stand St. Joseph. They'll be represented next time. Well, we had some technical difficulties too.
Yeah, but the dilemma that we're faced with is, you know, and this is the question that I pose. I don't mean to change the whole forum, but the question that I pose is, what do we do after the protests? What do we do when the riots calm down? What's the next step? Because we have to have some things that are either in writing or better communication skills to the point where we know we can trust the people who are put in our community to protect and serve us. And again, I say this with all due respect, specifically to Chief Connally, because now I know you better than I did, and you've committed to eating breakfast with, you know, some young minority men that we're going to get together, and you're trying to bridge the gap, because that's what it's going to take, honestly. But what do we do about the system? What do we do about the system? How are we able to dig a little bit deeper into the small nuances that go, you know, that transfer over when a minority might get pulled over, and he feels it. He feels he's being treated wrong, but there's no real way to combat someone with a badge and a gun.
We're going to go back to Chief Chris, and then I'm going to give everybody closing arguments because we're almost at the top of the hour. I know on live we started at about 20 till, so we want to give everybody some closing time. I see Pastor Warren. We'll go to Chris, Chief Connally, and then Pastor Robert Warren, who's trying to get me on the elliptical. So we got to wrap up the show in 10 minutes. No, and so Chief, David's posed some things. Chris talked about some things. When the system doesn't work, tell us how you're tracking that, and at what point do you say, okay, we've had 5 infractions here, and you got to go? Or because right now, like if as a school teacher and a community organizer, if we do the background check when they come in, they may actually commit some crime and become a child molester within 3 or 4 months on the job. And that school and that community center is not going to stop in the middle of the year and find that out. How do you know if they're doing a good job and if you got good cop, bad cop on your force?
Okay, couple of things when it comes to accountability. And Chris, I keep getting confused because I'm a Chris also. And thank you for your service. I spent 4 years in the Navy, so I can relate to that military discipline. And so one of the things we do, and Chris brought up about change in the military, is when we change policies or something like that, we train on any change we make, and we make every individual sign for it so that we can hold them accountable. And I personally believe that police officers need to be held to a higher expectation than any other type of employment, including off-duty. And and I've been questioned on when I've taken actions on things that have come off duty, and well, I'm just trying to be a citizen. Well, no, you're not. We'll by our rules, and you're not a normal citizen. You're a police officer, and I can also relate to your. I wasn't here. I've only been here 14 years, Chris. I wasn't around when you jaywalked or whatever it was. As far as I know, we don't have a jaywalking. If not, I'm a violator. And I do understand, and even Kardell, some of the things that you said too. I grew up in New Jersey. I'm a little bit like Chris. I was hanging around with the wrong crowd, doing the wrong things, and I ran off to the military to get my act together. And I think some point that you made was sometimes we create a really bad environment. And I've seen, you know, I've been in this business 36 years, and I've seen some of the young men and young women we've lost, and some of them I've just looked at and said, you know, I don't think that young man or that young lady really ever had a chance. And I think in some cases there's personal responsibility, but I think sometimes society helps guide it that way. And David, you always bring up the tough ones. I want you to know I had a discussion with the mayor today about body cams again. We are gonna bring back a proposal again for body cams, and we'll I don't know if we'll be able to fund it, but for those of you who don't know, I'm also the interim city manager, so I am going to try my best, and if I to see where I can come up with, you know, funding through the city. May take some time, but it's something we wanted before. I like it for a lot of reasons. I like it so that we have a record. I like it because accountability, not just for the officers, but also we find that when there's cameras, some of the studies point to, everybody just acts a little bit better. And, you know, and every one of us, I think we talked about this a week ago, every one of us should know, maybe I think I talked about it at the demonstration. Every one of us should know that we are always on camera anyway. Always. You're on cameras. You go down the Bell Highway, you go down I'm sure anywhere in Atlanta, you're on camera. And so I think those are important. Moving forward, I think that's a big topic here. And if I could write a book, I'd be like Chris over there, you know, sitting back.
Yeah, Latonya and I are going to be sending you donation letters.
Yeah, and I'll be taking care of your grants.
We got the body cams there.
But moving forward, and I see this a lot, and one of the reasons that myself and a number of members of my staff are passionate is we really believe in this thing called contact theory. You know, when you're around people that are different than you, then you start seeing the similarities. I'm around you guys here. I see my similarities, excuse me, with Kardell. I see my similarities with Chris, with David. So a lot of times we spend so much time focusing on our differences. And sometimes people look at skin color as differences, but really we focus on similarities that brings us together. So what I've been battling for years is, an example, you get a problem in the neighborhood, everybody comes together. They want to, you know, they've been affected by this problem. And we try to work with them, and we want to keep these meetings going. And then people lose focus. And they drop out here, they drop out there. And I think there's actually some studies that with social media that our attention spans are shortening. And with me, as I get older, I think my attention span is shortening, be honest with you. But I think part of it is just staying the course, and it doesn't happen fast. And you know, that I don't know that that's a good answer, but I think that's got to be something that, at least for me, that's a conviction that I have to make, and that I have to make in our department, is to keep moving forward. You know, I look at our department from day to day, I don't see much difference. From today, from 14 years ago when I got here, I see a big difference. So the change happens, it never happens fast enough, but we got to keep going there. And when it comes to accountability is key to trust. It's a key to the legitimacy of the system. You know, I get frustrated with other aspects of the criminal justice system, as many other people do. I've seen some people get slammed by the system, and some people I'm like, oh my gosh, this person just walked away and got away with that. Literally, I used to be a homicide investigator in a city that had a lot of homicides, and I literally seen somebody walk away with murder while someone else got slammed for this, and I'm like, it's hard for me to mix or match. That's the world according to this Chris, kind of like Chris Weston said. So, you know, I don't want to take everybody's time up, but you know, that's kind of how I see it. And we've got to, you know, when leaders like us here, when we stay committed, we may not bring as many people, you know, in my opinion, some days I can only influence and change one person at a time. Other days I can influence a lot, but as long as I don't give. And sometimes changing one person's life at a time is what it takes. But if you let that grow, each one of us here changes one person's life tomorrow, we just changed what, 9, 10 lives? And we do another one. And if that person changes someone's life, then the next day we've changed that. Plus we got 9 other people that have changed 9 other lives. So that conviction, setting that example, that's the kind of leadership. And everyone here, we're all leaders. We all have a leadership component. And I think that was brought up. I don't know if David brought up, somebody brought that up last week. And I'd love to, I wish the bishop could say, because he's got some, I enjoyed listening to him too, because he has some wise words. He might be able to give us more advice with his wisdom too. But that probably should be my closing remarks, since I'm eating up your time. And you got to get on the treadmill.
No, I know. We can keep going, but Pastor Warren is on here. Pastor Warren, we're going to give closing remarks right now. Unfortunately, you know, the stats that I'm looking at says out of 15 prominent cases in which Black people were killed by the police or died in custody, only 3 officers were convicted. We're not talking about Botham James and George Floyd and Ahmaud Arbery and the case where you lived, Chris Weston, John Crawford, that had the BB gun. We're not talking about those are 2 current, but just 2014, 2015, and 2016 out of the 15 Black lives ended in confrontation. Only 3 officers were convicted. So my question in closing, and I appreciate Bishop Howell for being there from Minneapolis in the beginning of the show, but in closing, I want to know, what is everybody committed to, and what do we need to do if we don't get the conviction that we need to in the George Floyd case? We've already lost millions and millions, if not over $1 billion right now in property. Lives have been lost when the peaceful protests have gone. I wish we would have supported Colin Kaepernick more for kneeling, because whether he was praying and bowing his head or whether he was just saying, I got to do something, I'm going to risk my money and my career and everything, I wish we would have. I think in hindsight is the best teacher, but what are we going to do if we don't get the conviction, and what can we do while we're waiting? So in closing, everybody just take 1 minute, because we do got to wrap up the Solution Summit, and hopefully you will come back and say more. So Ishaq, I think we kind of started with you down there in Atlanta. You was outside CNN, and you ensured that it didn't get burned down. So what are you going to do? And in the last minute, what do you think is needed while we're waiting for a conviction?
Well, honestly, I think to just stay the course, like Chief Connally was saying, stay the course. And also, what I don't think anyone mentioned right now is to really get involved with voting, and to be more involved with every aspect of your local community government, the county city council meetings, or there's so much that you can actually be a part of to at least infect change. I'm not sure if you knew about the 2 college students in Atlanta that got pulled out of the car, the windows were busted open and they got tased, okay? But less than 24 hours later, 2 were fired and all 6 were charged, okay? And I feel like the reason why that happens so swiftly is because we have people in place in offices to make those decisions, because we have representation in those places, okay? They didn't get there by themselves, they got voted in. And that's why you see the actual power of the vote. And so many people want to disclaim that, but they don't, but they want to pick up all these other avenues. So I think just being completely involved in as many areas as you can be is what's going to be the most beneficial. And that's what I pledge to do, because I haven't been involved in everything. I've voted in some elections and I voted in what I think is a majority of them, but I feel like being a little bit more assertive and making sure that I'm out there, because I've got 4 kids. I've got 3 and 1 on the way, okay? And this is not, it's something that I've been dealing with. This is something that my mom was dealing with, and something that we've all been dealing with for years and years and years. And I don't want my kids to go through the same thing that we're going through at this point. So I've made the pledge, and that's where I'm at.
Ishaq, thank you for bringing up voting, because a lot of people will complain. I'm going to send it to Latonya next. We've had the conversation. Ishaq's involved with My Brother's Keeper and Ebenezer Church, where Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King called his home. And he's continuing the work with peaceful protests from ATL. We'll have you come back again. Latonya Williams, how critical is that they're involved and not just showing up and then we don't see them for the rest of the year? You have a lot of programs coming up in Juneteenth and just a plethora of community activities. Do you have enough people at the Bartlett Center? Latonya, in closing, what will you be committed to do, and what can we do while we wait for the guilty verdict or a verdict in our favor?
Well, I think that I have a unique aspect to where I'm on the opposite end of the spectrum. I've got the kids. I've got everybody's kids. And so what I am pledging to do is I have been helping all of the children understand. And it's crazy because a lot of it I don't even understand on my own. Okay, but the kids have questions because your kids are listening to you talk. And then in the morning, I get them and they ask me about the meaning of everything that you guys are saying. And so I am pledging to help these children understand and control their anger appropriately.
Conflict resolution is critical because, I mean, their minds are going to be shaped and formed around these polarizing events. So thank you for the critical work that you're doing. Call her, inbox her, go to the Bartlett Center's page. We have a lot of events coming up, and we don't want to just see you right now and everybody go back home and quietly into the night and then want the outcome to be favorable. So thank you so much for being here, Latonya Williams. And then we're going to take it to Pastor Warren, who we haven't heard from because he's been already bouncing in and out. And this is the second event of the day. Pastor Warren, as a pastor, as a teacher, as someone who's been committed to education and an assistant football coach, what are you committed to doing and what do you think the community should be doing while we wait? I know you're going to say prayer, but what else, Pastor Robert Warren?
Oh, third event. We were at a prayer vigil
at 7
a.m., 7:30 a.m. So yeah. My thing is to help pour into this next generation, because they're the one that's gonna really help make the change. In my generation, and one before me, we faced some racial problems, but we just sweep it on the table, but we were quiet, and that's what we were taught to do. And we speak out when we can, but they were trying to stay alive, and survive. My parents, age born, in the 20s, they held their peace, or they'd been dead and lynched, literally. But this generation here, which is already international, interracial, black, white, all different races, and they're more vocal, and they're helping to make change. And so I think because they're standing up and they're protesting now, and no matter how good you try to be, there's always going to be some crazies in there. It is going to be. So I guess that's where the police come in, if they can to help manage it, in a peaceful manner without escalating it. But I think helping to pour into this generation, because they may not be as confident to do what they're doing. So we're to help them, give them confidence that, yeah, you can do this, peacefully. But they're vocal and they're standing together. It's not just all black, it's not just all white, they're unified. That's something that is encouraging to see. You're not just seeing this all black people out there demonstrating. There's black people, there's white people, there's different colors. That's very encouraging. And to help encourage that generation, then I believe you can really make a change, because that generation, 18 to 35 or 18 to 30, they're bigger than a baby boom generation, which was just 1942 or whatever through 1965, right after World War I, right after World War II. So this generation is bigger than that generation, so they can make change by their voice, and standing up.
Thank you so much for your contribution tonight. David, Lyric, Foster, what are you committed to doing, and what do you think the community needs to be doing? Not just the young people, you can talk about anybody. Do you see the other businessmen, businesswomen that are committed to change?
Well, first of all, I think everybody's kind of doing what they should be doing anyway. So what I mean by that is, some people will protest. Some people will speak out. Some people will hold up signs. Some people will march. Some people will be on conferences like we're on right now. Some people might just be on Facebook and they try to share every positive message that they can about the subject. I'm not going to say everybody has to do one thing, but everybody can do something. And deep inside yourself, you know what that something is. I believe that. For me personally, what I'm going to do is probably just to keep doing what I've been doing and keep targeting the 3 issues that I think should be better. But that's kind of in a nutshell, and I think we already know what those 3 issues are. The other thing that I would do is I'll keep asking you if you need help, because you're already in the community. Tanya's already in the community. I've committed to, trying to bring together a few young men to bridge that gap between, where they live, what they do on a daily basis, and maybe some of the leaders in our community. And hopefully that is enough to at least inspire and motivate some young men to want to be better. And I think that's a good start.
Thank you so much for your contribution in the community, and thank you so much for your contribution tonight. We just have a few more now. I think we're going to go to Kardell Sims, and what are you committed to doing? I know you've already been in motion and you have a goal to change the community that you came from, but you have children that you've been pouring into and having some hard conversations with. What's on your agenda while we wait for justice, and what are you going to do in the last 60 seconds to affect change?
I'm going to continue what I do, going out, speaking to the youth, sharing my story, sitting down, having conversations with them, feeling their pain, and having great dialogue, and, teach them how to conflict resolution without having to tear nothing up. I think what we have to do now as a whole is, now that it's out there, we got to sit down with everybody that's open to the dialogue and know that we need change. And it starts with the vote, starts with the legislation. I mean, our fundamental law, the Constitution, it really needs to change, because it alone is racism on itself. So I'm just going to continue doing what I do and reach out to everybody that I can help out and help in some kind of way.
Thank you so much for being on the show tonight and what you do. We appreciate your input. Leameana, I am going to go to you in closing too, because you've been here for tech support with LD Data Solutions, but also you've raised 3 kids in New York, and you have a son and a daughter here. And so in closing, as a mother, what do you think is needed, and what are you committed to do? We talked last week about you losing a son, but he did graduate from the school, and now you're hanging on to your other ones and making sure you push them to excellence. So I'll give you the floor for the last minute.
To start off, yes, I did lose a son in the SUV accident on Riverside in 2017. That pushed me to kind of step out of my box and volunteer, because I felt there was a need to help boys his age who really didn't have an outlet. And, they were all at my house, because he was an aspiring rapper. They were all at my house and they were just rapping. And so, as long as I knew where he was, he could have anybody he wanted over here, as long as they were respectful. And, it gave them a place to be instead of running the street. My commitment now is, since the accident, I've a calling that I had that I didn't even know I had, it was just a hobby to me, is technology. And my commitment now is just to help those like Mid-City get their voices heard through technology. The Zoom call tonight, that was me. Anybody who needs to have their outlet be online, or who needs help with any of that, I'm your girl. I'm the one who will help you get your voice heard, get your platform up and running, and I will continue to volunteer at Mid-City and teach the kids technology. And so that's my commitment, is to reach them through technology.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for being here and for the support support that you give and pour it into other young men's lives and other women's lives. We're going to end with Chris Weston, and you get 60 seconds, Chris. Chris, I think got some little preaching here, man. But MLK says, in spite of temporary victories, violence never brings permanent peace. We adopt the means of nonviolence because our end is a community at peace with itself. We will try to persuade with our words, but if our words fail us, we will try to persuade with our acts. So, Mr. Chris Airman Weston, what are you doing with your acts? And while we wait, what tip can you give to the people that are watching in St. Joseph and all over the country?
Thank you. Keep it as short as I can. I have a saying: I hope for the best, but I prepare for the worst. Meaning, I don't expect a guilty verdict. History has shown us that they may figure out a way to push it to the side. But that being said, I am preparing comfort for the people that I see that Chris is still not changing. It's the same thing. Well, the reality is, since the Trayvon Martin, things have ramped up, but I've seen more people get involved. I've seen more people post to Facebook. I've seen more people get out and vote. I've seen more people run for public office. I see the hope. I don't think it's coming in this one. If it does, I'd be great. But I'm preparing. I'm doing my research. I'm starting book clubs to encourage my friends like Latonya to how to speak better to the children, to explain to them the world that they're going out into, because the way that we prepare our, not just Black children, all children to look
Say that again.
Not just Black children, all children, to understand the history of this United States and how it started out with some evil stuff. But like Pastor Warren said, we are history. I am Black history, meaning I can change. I can change it. If it be my sons and my daughters, your sons, your daughters, the young children that Latonya can mold to explain this was horrible, but you can change it because times have changed. And I'm just going to try my best to keep it moving, to let everyone know, hey, I've been keeping track and things are getting better. Like I say, Chief Connally is, I didn't know he was in St. Joseph, but I'm very excited to meet. Very, very excited to meet. Thank you. Thank you for having me on.
Thank you for being here, Chris. When you come to town, please come and speak with us. I like your idea about holding public office, because we all, last week, I think Chief said, it's not just our job, it's the school's job, the parents' job, the church's jobs, because we've had some parents go to the school and tell people, you better beat her up, you don't take that, you cuss out the teacher. And so we've had some parents empower the kids in the wrong way because of their experiences with their principals. So book clubs, talking to them, not just Black kids. All kids need to be culturally sensitive, because if we empower them the right kind of way, they will squash out bullying themselves without the principal having to come out their office. So very, very poignant thoughts tonight. I'm going to end with Ephesians 6:23. Let not your hearts be troubled, even if we get not guilty verdict. Keep the faith in the process and be the change. Let not your hearts be troubled, neither let them be afraid. Peace to you, brothers and sisters, from God the Father and Lord Jesus. And Philippians 4:7, the peace of God will surpass all understanding. Let it guard your hearts and your minds through Christ Jesus. Thank you all, Facebook land and Zoom, for watching the Solution Summit with Mid-City Excellence. I'm Kimberly Warren, CEO, your host. We'll see you next week at 7:30. God bless you all.
Thank you for having it.
Thank you.
Man, hey, call me up anytime. And if I'm talking too much, don't feel bad. Be like, Chris, that's enough. That's enough, Chris.
Wait, what's that number again? We sending you the donation letter.
Oh, yeah. Actually,
we need body cams. We need new playgrounds. I need some new computers. What you need?
I am committed to the Bartlett Center, better known as Horseman. But hey,
East Side.
I'll vote for him. I'll vote for him, and I got $1 on that. But I think I already owe Bartlett Center a couple checks anyway. Love you guys.
Bartlett Center's spelled MCE now. I know you've been gone. I know you've been gone for a while.
Hey, you know what? Hey, I will put you guys in the budget. I love what you're doing. I love
We
it.
love you all. We're all brothers and sisters. Thank you all. My husband will love me after I get on that elliptical. Have a good night. God bless you.
Good night.